The old Ford pickup truck coughed and wheezed as it pulled into the gravel parking lot of Murphy's Diner. Eleanor Whitmore turned off the engine and sat for a moment, staring at the weathered building through her windshield. Paint peeled from the wooden siding, and a neon sign flickered the word "Open" in bright red letters. This was exactly what she needed. At 82 years old, Eleanor had grown tired of five-star restaurants and crystal chandeliers. She was tired of waiters who bowed and scraped because they knew her net worth. She was tired of meals that cost more than most people made in a week. That's why she had left her mansion 3 days ago, driving her late husband's old truck across the country with nothing but a small suitcase and a heart full of longing for something real. The bell above the door chimed as Eleanor stepped inside Murphy's Diner. The smell of bacon grease and fresh coffee filled the air. Red vinyl booths lined the windows, their seats cracked and patched with duct tape. The black and white checkered floor had seen better days, but it was clean. A few truckers sat at the counter, their conversation mixing with the sizzle from the kitchen grill. Eleanor chose a booth in the corner, away from the other customers. She wore a simple blue sweater and faded jeans, her silver hair pulled back in a loose bun. Her wedding ring was the only hint of the wealth she carried, but even that looked modest in this setting. She wanted to blend in, to be just another grandmother stopping for breakfast. The diner buzzed with the kind of energy that only comes from honest work. A cook called out orders from the kitchen while someone operated the cash register with practiced efficiency. The smell of pancakes and maple syrup made Eleanor's stomach growl. When was the last time she had felt truly hungry? At home, meals appeared on schedule whether she wanted them or not. A young woman approached Eleanor's table, notepad in hand, and a genuine smile on her face. She looked to be in her early 20s, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and kind brown eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. Her uniform was simple but spotless, and she moved with the confidence of someone who took pride in her work. "Good morning," the waitress said, her voice warm and friendly. "I'm Katie, and I'll be taking care of you today. Can I start you off with some coffee?" Eleanor nodded, grateful for the normalcy of the interaction. "Please, black." As Katie reached for the coffee pot from a nearby station, Eleanor noticed something that made her breath catch. Around the young woman's neck hung a silver pendant on a delicate chain. Even from a distance, Eleanor could see the intricate engravings that covered its surface. The locket was tarnished with age, but its beauty remained unmistakable. Katie returned and poured the coffee with steady hands. "Have you had a chance to look at the menu, or would you like a few more minutes?" Eleanor tried to focus on Katie's words, but her eyes kept drifting to the pendant. The design was so familiar it made her chest tight with emotion. Roses and vines intertwined across the silver surface, surrounding a small diamond that caught the light from the window. She knew every curve and line of that locket, because she had traced them with her own fingers countless times as a child. "Ma'am, are you feeling all right?" Katie's voice carried genuine concern. "You look a little pale." Eleanor shook her head, trying to clear her thoughts. "I'm sorry, dear. I was just admiring your necklace. It's quite beautiful." Katie's hand moved unconsciously to the locket, her fingers closing around it protectively. A soft smile crossed her face, the kind that comes with treasured memories. "Thank you. It belonged to my grandmother. She passed away a few years ago, but wearing this makes me feel like she's still with me somehow." The coffee mug trembled in Eleanor's hands. She set it down carefully, afraid she might drop it. The locket wasn't just similar to one she remembered. It was identical. But how could that be possible? "Your grandmother must have had excellent taste," Eleanor managed to say, her voice slightly hoarse. "She did," Katie replied, her eyes lighting up with pride. "Grandma Rosa always said this locket came from someone very special. She worked as a housekeeper for many years, and one of the families she worked for gave it to her. She used to tell me stories about the lady who gave it to her, how kind and generous she was. Eleanor's world seemed to tilt on its axis. Rosa. The name hit her like a physical blow. After all these years, after wondering what had happened to the woman who had been like a mother to her own children, here was a connection she never expected to find. Katie continued talking, unaware of the storm of emotions brewing in the elderly woman across from her. Grandma Rosa raised me after my parents died in an accident when I was little. She used to say that kindness always finds its way back to you, just like this locket found its way to our family. Eleanor's hands shook as she picked up her coffee again. She needed something to do with her hands, something to ground herself in the present moment. The hot liquid burned her tongue, but she welcomed the sensation. It proved this was real, not some dream or hallucination brought on by too many lonely nights. "She sounds like a wonderful woman," Eleanor said softly. "She was the best," Katie replied, her voice thick with emotion. "She worked so hard to give me a good life. Even when she got older and her arthritis made it difficult, she kept working. She said she wanted to make sure I could go to college and have opportunities she never had." Eleanor watched as Katie absently polished a spot on the table that was already clean. The young woman's love for her grandmother radiated from every word she spoke. It reminded Eleanor of her own feelings for Rosa, the woman who had helped raise her children and had become an irreplaceable part of the Whitmore family. "Are you in college now?" Eleanor asked, genuinely curious about this young woman's life. Katie's cheeks flushed slightly. "I'm trying to be. I'm taking classes at the community college when I can, studying to be a nurse. It's slow going because I have to work full-time to pay for everything, but I'm determined. Grandma Rosa always said that helping people was the most important job in the world." Eleanor's heart swelled with a mixture of pride and sadness. Rosa had clearly passed on her values to her granddaughter. The kindness, the work ethic, the desire to serve others. It was all there in this young woman who didn't even know she was speaking to someone whose life had been touched by the same remarkable woman. The morning sun streamed through the diner window, casting a warm glow across Katie's face as she talked about her grandmother. Eleanor found herself hanging on every word, desperate to learn more about Rosa's life after she had left the Whitmore household. Had she been happy? Had she ever regretted leaving? Had she ever wondered about the family she had helped raise? "I should probably let you order," Katie said with an apologetic smile. "I didn't mean to talk your ear off about my grandmother. It's just that not many people ask about the locket, and when they do, I can't help but share her story." Eleanor realized she hadn't even glanced at the menu. Her mind was too full of memories and questions to focus on food. But she needed to stay, needed to learn more about this connection to her past that had appeared so unexpectedly. "Take your time, dear," Eleanor said, her voice gentler than it had been in years. "I'm in no hurry at all." Eleanor ordered scrambled eggs and toast, though food was the last thing on her mind. As Katie walked away to place the order, Eleanor's fingers traced the rim of her coffee cup, her thoughts spinning back through decades. Rosa Martinez had worked for the Whitmore family for over 20 years, arriving as a young woman barely older than Katie was now. The sound of sizzling bacon from the kitchen pulled Eleanor back to the present, but her heart remained trapped in the past. She remembered the first day Rosa had knocked on their door, nervous but determined, clutching a letter of recommendation from another family. Eleanor had been a new mother then, overwhelmed and exhausted, trying to manage a large house and 2 small children while her husband traveled constantly for business. Katie returned with a fresh pot of coffee, refilling Eleanor's cup without being asked. The simple gesture reminded Eleanor so much of Rosa's thoughtful nature that tears pricked at the corners of her eyes. "Are you sure you're feeling all right?" Katie asked, genuine concern creasing her brow. "You seem a little emotional." "Today," Eleanor dabbed at her eyes with a napkin, embarrassed by her reaction. "I'm fine, dear. Your story about your grandmother just brought back some memories of my own." Did you know someone like her? Katie asked, sliding into the booth across from Eleanor. The lunch rush hadn't started yet, and the diner was quiet enough for conversation. Someone who worked hard and took care of everyone around them? Eleanor's breath caught. Should she tell this young woman the truth? Would Katie even believe her if she did? The story seemed too incredible, too much like something from a movie to be real. But the locket around Katie's neck was proof that sometimes the impossible actually happened. Yes, Eleanor said carefully. I knew someone exactly like that. Her name was Rosa, too, actually. Katie's eyes widened with surprise. Really? That's amazing. What are the chances? Tell me about her. Eleanor's mind raced. Where should she begin? How could she explain 20 years of shared life in a few sentences? Rosa hadn't just been an employee. She had been family in every way that mattered. Rosa came to work for us when I was a young mother, Eleanor began, her voice soft with memory. I had 2 small children and felt completely lost. My husband was always away on business trips, and I was drowning in responsibility. Katie leaned forward, clearly interested. Eleanor noticed how the young woman's face lit up when someone mentioned caring for others. Rosa had been the same way, always more concerned about everyone else's needs than her own. Rosa saved my sanity, Eleanor continued. She didn't just clean and cook. She helped raise my children when I didn't know what I was doing. When my son fell off his bike and scraped his knee, Rosa was there with bandages and kisses. When my daughter had nightmares, Rosa would sit by her bed and tell stories until she fell back asleep. She sounds wonderful, Katie said, her voice warm with recognition. My grandma was like that too. She always knew exactly what to do in any situation. When I was scared or sad, she would hold me and tell me everything would be okay. And somehow, it always was. Eleanor's heart ached with the familiar pain of missing someone who could never be replaced. Rosa had this way of making everything better just by being there. She could turn the most ordinary day into something special. She taught my children to cook traditional Mexican dishes, and they loved learning about her culture. That's so beautiful, Katie said, unconsciously touching the locket at her throat. My grandma used to cook the most amazing meals. Even when we didn't have much money, she could make magic happen in the kitchen. She said food was love made visible. The phrase hit Eleanor like lightning. Rosa had said those exact words countless times as she prepared meals for the Whitmore family. Food was love made visible. Eleanor had heard Rosa say it so often that she had started saying it to her own children. That's a lovely way to put it, Eleanor managed, her voice barely above a whisper. Katie's expression grew thoughtful. No, it's funny. My grandma always talked about a family she worked for, way back before I was born. She said they treated her like she was part of their own family, not just hired help. The lady of the house was especially kind to her. Eleanor's pulse quickened. What did she say about this family? Well, Grandma always spoke about them with such love, Katie said, warming to the topic. She said the lady had lost her own mother, young, and they kind of took care of each other. The lady would ask Grandma for advice about raising her children, and Grandma felt honored to be trusted that way. Eleanor remembered those conversations so clearly. She had been terrified of making mistakes as a mother, and Rosa's wisdom had been like a lifeline. Rosa had raised 6 children of her own before coming to work for the Whitmores, and her experience had been invaluable. The lady must have appreciated her very much, Eleanor said carefully. Oh, she did, Katie replied, her eyes bright with pride. Grandma said they used to have long talks while folding laundry or preparing dinner. The lady would tell Grandma about her dreams and worries, and Grandma would share stories about her own life. They became real friends. Eleanor's throat tightened. She remembered those conversations, too. The way Rosa would listen without judgment, offering gentle advice wrapped in warmth and understanding. When Eleanor's husband died suddenly of a heart attack, Rosa had been the one to hold her while she sobbed. the one to help her figure out how to keep living. "What happened to Rosa?" Eleanor asked, though she dreaded the answer. Katie's expression grew sad. "She got older, and her arthritis made it hard for her to keep working. She had to leave that family and find less demanding work. She always regretted not being able to say a proper goodbye. The family moved away around the same time, and she never saw them again." Eleanor's heart broke all over again. She remembered that terrible time, the chaos of her husband's death, the rushed decisions about selling the house and moving closer to her grown children. In all the confusion and grief, she had lost touch with Rosa. She had tried to find her later, but Rosa had moved and left no forwarding address. She missed them terribly, Katie continued, especially near the end. She would look at this locket and tell me about all the good times she had with that family. She said the lady gave her this necklace as a thank you gift, but it meant so much more than that to her. Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached for her coffee again. The locket had been her grandmother's, passed down through 3 generations of Whitmore women. She had given it to Rosa because Rosa had been more than an employee. She had been a sister, a friend, a second mother to Eleanor's children. "It must have been very precious to her," Eleanor said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "It was her most treasured possession," Katie confirmed. "She used to say that as long as she wore it, she carried a piece of that family's love with her always. She told me that true love never really dies. It just gets passed down from one generation to the next." Eleanor closed her eyes, overwhelmed by the flood of memories and emotions. Here sat Rosa's granddaughter, wearing the Whitmore family locket, carrying on Rosa's legacy of kindness and hard work. The circle of love that had started so many years ago was still unbroken, still alive in this young woman who didn't even know the full story of her inheritance. When Eleanor opened her eyes again, Katie was studying her with concern. "I'm sorry," the young woman said softly. "I didn't mean to upset you with all this talk about the past." "You haven't upset me," Eleanor said, reaching across the table to pat Katie's hand. "Sometimes the most beautiful stories are also the saddest ones. Your grandmother sounds like she was an extraordinary woman." "She was," Katie said, squeezing Eleanor's hand in return. "I just wish I could find that family she loved so much. I'd love to tell them how much they meant to her, how often she talked about them with such gratitude and affection." Eleanor's heart pounded so hard she was sure Katie could hear it. The moment of truth was approaching, and she wasn't sure she was ready for it. But looking into this young woman's kind eyes so much like Rosa's had been, Eleanor knew she couldn't keep the secret much longer. Eleanor stared at Katie's hand covering hers, feeling the warmth of Rosa's granddaughter's touch. The weight of the secret she carried felt heavier with each passing moment. Around them, the diner continued its normal rhythm. The cook calling. Out orders, the coffee machine hissing, other customers chatting quietly. But Eleanor felt suspended in time. "Katie," she said softly, her voice barely audible above the ambient noise. "What if I told you that the family your grandmother worked for might be closer than you think?" Katie tilted her head, confusion flickering across her face. "What do you mean?" Eleanor took a deep breath, knowing that once she spoke the words, everything would change. Her heart hammered against her ribs as she made the decision that would alter both their lives forever. "My name isn't just Eleanor," she said, her voice growing stronger with each word. "My full name is Eleanor Whitmore." For a moment, Katie simply stared at her, the name not registering. Then, slowly, recognition dawned in her eyes. Her hand flew to the locket at her throat, and her mouth dropped open in shock. "No," Katie whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. "That's not possible. The Whitmores they were wealthy people, important people. You're just an old woman in an old truck eating breakfast in a diner?" Eleanor finished gently. Yes, I am. But I'm also the woman who gave that locket to your grandmother 43 years ago. Katie's eyes filled with tears as she stared at Eleanor with new understanding. Her fingers traced the familiar engravings on the silver pendant. The same patterns Eleanor had memorized as a child when it belonged to her own grandmother. You're her, Katie breathed. You're the lady who treated Grandma like family, the one she talked about all those years. Eleanor nodded, tears streaming down her own cheeks now. Rosa Martinez was the most wonderful woman I ever knew. She didn't just work for my family. She saved us. She saved me. Katie's hands shook as she unclasped the locket and opened it. Inside, a tiny photograph showed a much younger Rosa holding a baby. Eleanor gasped when she saw it. She remembered taking that picture herself, capturing Rosa with Eleanor's newborn daughter. She kept this photo all these years, Katie said, her voice thick with emotion. She told me it was her favorite picture ever taken. She said the lady who took it made her feel like the most important person in the world that day. Eleanor remembered that day perfectly. Rosa had been nervous about holding the baby for a photograph, worried about overstepping boundaries, but Eleanor had insisted, knowing that Rosa's love for her children was every bit as strong as her own. Your grandmother held my babies before I did, Eleanor said softly. When my son was born, I was so weak from a difficult delivery. Rosa was the first person to hold him, to whisper to him that he was loved. She was there for every scraped knee, every fever, every nightmare. She taught my children how to be kind, how to work hard, how to treat everyone with respect regardless of their station in life. Katie wiped tears from her eyes with the back of her hand. She talked about your children all the time. Tommy and little Beth, right? She said Tommy was always getting into mischief, and Beth was quiet but smart as a whip. Eleanor's heart soared hearing the names spoken with such familiarity. Tommy is 52 now and runs a charity that builds homes for low-income families. Beth became a teacher and has dedicated her life to helping underprivileged children. Everything good about them came from Rosa's influence. She would be so proud, Katie said, clutching the locket to her chest. She always wondered what happened to them. She used to say that watching children grow up and then losing touch with them was like having pieces of your heart scattered to the wind. Eleanor reached across the table and took Katie's free hand. I tried to find her after we moved. I hired private investigators. I contacted every employment agency in the city. But Rosa had moved too. And in those days, it wasn't easy to track someone down who didn't want to be found. Why didn't she want to be found? Katie asked. Eleanor's expression grew sad. I think she was protecting herself from more heartbreak. Rosa had already lost so much in her life. Her husband died young. She had to leave her own children in Mexico to find work here. Maybe losing us was just too painful, and she decided it was easier to move on than to risk being hurt again. Katie nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. Grandma never talked much about the sad parts of her life. She always focused on the good memories, the people who showed her kindness. But sometimes, late at night when she thought I was sleeping, I would hear her crying. She was crying for all of us, Eleanor said. For the family she left behind in Mexico, for the children she helped raise who grew up and moved away, for all the love she gave that she couldn't take with her when she left. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both overwhelmed by the magnitude of their connection. The breakfast rush had started, and the diner filled with the sounds of busy conversation and clinking dishes. But their corner booth felt like a sacred space where past and present had collided in the most beautiful way possible. I can't believe you're here, Katie said finally. I can't believe I found you, or you found me, or however this happened. Eleanor smiled through her tears. Your grandmother used to say that the universe has a way of bringing people together when they need each other most. I thought it was just something she said to make me feel better when I was worried about my children. But maybe she was right. Katie laughed, a sound that reminded Eleanor so much of Rosa's own laughter that it took her breath away. She had a saying for everything. Whenever something good happened, she'd say it was because we'd been living right and putting good energy into the world. And when something bad happened, Eleanor asked, though she suspected she knew the answer, she'd say it was just the universe testing us to make sure we were strong enough for the good things coming our way. Katie replied with a watery smile. Eleanor shook her head in amazement. 40 years later, and Rosa is still teaching me life. Lessons through her granddaughter. Tell me more about her, Katie said eagerly. Tell me about the Rosa you knew. I have my memories of Grandma. But I want to know about the woman she was when she was younger, when she was taking care of your family. Eleanor's eyes lit up with the joy of sharing precious memories. Rosa had this way of making everything an adventure. When she did laundry, she would tell my children stories about each piece of clothing, where it had been, what adventures it had seen. A grass-stained shirt became evidence of a great battle between Tommy and the backyard dragons. Katie giggled. She did that with me too. When I helped her fold clothes, every sock had a personality and every shirt had a story. She made cleaning into games, Eleanor continued. Dusting became a treasure hunt for hidden surprises she would leave around the house. Vacuuming became a dance where the vacuum cleaner was her partner. My children would beg to help her with chores because she made work feel like play. That's exactly how she got me to help around the house, Katie said, wonder in her voice. I thought she made all that up just for me. Rosa had enough love and creativity to make every child feel special, Eleanor said. That was her gift. She could see the magic in ordinary moments and help everyone around her see it too. The truth hung between them now, solid and real and life-changing. Katie wore the locket that had once belonged to Eleanor's grandmother, carried the love that Rosa had shared with the Whitmore family, and embodied all the values that Rosa had treasured. The circle of love that had seemed broken so many years ago was whole again, connecting past and present in ways that neither woman could have imagined. When they woke up that morning, the lunch crowd had thinned out, leaving Eleanor and Katie in their corner booth surrounded by empty plates and cold coffee. Neither woman seemed to notice the passage of time. They had 43 years of catching up to do, and every story shared felt like finding another missing piece of a puzzle they hadn't known was incomplete. What happened after Rosa left? Katie asked, her voice soft with concern. How did your family manage without her? Eleanor's expression grew distant as she recalled those difficult years. We struggled, she admitted. Not financially, of course, but emotionally. Rosa had been the heart of our home. Without her warmth and wisdom, the house felt cold and empty, even with all our expensive furniture and artwork. Grandma felt the same way about leaving, Katie said. She would talk about how hard it was to start over somewhere new, especially when she was getting older. She found work with other families, but she always said it wasn't the same. She missed being part of something bigger than just a job. Eleanor nodded, understanding completely. We hired other housekeepers, but none of them were Rosa. They did their work well enough, but they didn't love us. They didn't become part of our story the way Rosa had. Katie twisted the locket between her fingers, a habit Eleanor recognized from Rosa's own nervous gestures. Grandma used to say that some people come into your life to do a job, but others come to fill a space in your heart you didn't even know was empty. She was so wise, Eleanor said, marveling at how Rosa's philosophy continued to live on through her granddaughter. I spent years trying to find her, Katie. Even after my children were grown and had families of their own, I would sometimes hire investigators to search for her. I wanted to thank her properly, to let her know how much she meant to us. She knew, Katie assured her. She might not have heard it from you directly, but she knew. She carried that knowledge with her every day. It's why she treasured this locket so much and why she passed down all those stories to me. The manager of the diner approached their table, clearly concerned about how long they had been sitting there. But when he saw their tear-streaked faces and the intimate nature of their conversation, he simply refilled their coffee cups and walked away without a word. Eleanor looked at Katie with fresh eyes, seeing not just Rosa's granddaughter, but a young woman facing her own challenges with the same grace and determination Rosa had shown decades ago. "Tell me about your dreams, Katie. What do you want to do with your life?" Katie's face lit up despite her tears. "I want to be a nurse. I've always felt called to take care of people, just like Grandma did in her own way. She may not have had medical training, but she knew how to heal hearts and make people feel better when they were hurting." "That's a beautiful way to honor her memory," Eleanor said, her mind already racing with possibilities. "How long have you been working toward this goal?" 3 years now," Katie replied, her enthusiasm evident. "I take classes whenever I can afford them, usually 1 or 2 at a time. At this rate, it'll take me another 4 years to finish my degree. But I'm determined to make it happen, even if I have to work double shifts to pay for it." Eleanor's heart swelled with admiration for this young woman's perseverance. Rosa would have been so proud to see her granddaughter working toward such a noble goal. "Katie, I have a proposition for you." "What kind of proposition?" Katie asked, wariness creeping into her voice. She had learned to be suspicious of offers. That seemed too good to be true. "I want to pay for your education," Eleanor said simply. "All of it. Tuition, books, living expenses while you study. I want to make sure you can focus on becoming the nurse you're meant to be." Katie's eyes went wide with shock. I can't accept that. It's too much. You don't even really know me." "I know enough," Eleanor said firmly. "You're Rosa's granddaughter. You have her heart, her work ethic, and her desire to help others. That's all I need to know." "But why would you do this for me?" Katie asked, tears streaming down her face again. Eleanor reached across the table and took both of Katie's hands in hers. "Because I couldn't do it for Rosa. Because she gave my family so much and I never got the chance to give back to her. Because sometimes the universe gives us a second chance to do the right thing." Katie shook her head, overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Eleanor encouraged gently. "Let me help you achieve your dreams. Let me finally repay some of the debt I owe your grandmother." For a long moment, Katie sat in stunned silence. Then, slowly, she nodded. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you. Thank you so much." Eleanor smiled wider than she had in years. "There's more, Katie. I don't want this to be just about money. I want you in my life. I want to hear about your classes, your struggles, your victories. I want to be the grandmother figure Rosa would have wanted you to have." "I'd like that too," Katie said, squeezing Eleanor's hands. "I've missed having family. It's been so lonely since Grandma died." "You're not alone anymore," Eleanor promised. "We're family now, connected by Rosa's love and by this incredible chance meeting that brought us together." They sat in comfortable silence for a few moments, both processing the magnitude of what had just happened. 2 strangers had walked into this diner that morning, and now they were family, bound together by love that had transcended time and distance. "I have an idea," Eleanor said suddenly. "I want to create a scholarship fund in Rosa's name. Something to help other young people like you pursue careers in healthcare and education. Would you help me run it?" Katie's eyes sparkled with excitement. "Really? You'd want me to be involved in something that important?" "I can't think of anyone better," Eleanor replied. "Rosa believed in the power of education and helping others. Together, we can make sure her values live on and help other deserving young people achieve their dreams." "The Rosa Martinez Memorial Scholarship Fund," Katie said softly, testing the name. "Grandma would love knowing that her name was helping other people get the opportunities she never had." "Exactly," Eleanor agreed. "We'll make sure that Rosa's legacy of kindness and love continues to change lives for generations to come." Katie wiped her eyes with a napkin, her tears now tears of joy rather than sorrow. "I keep thinking this is all a dream, That I'm going to wake up and find out none of this really happened. Eleanor laughed, a sound full of genuine happiness. If it is a dream, then we're both having the same one, and I don't ever want to wake up from it. What happens now? Katie asked. I mean, after we leave this diner, how do we move forward? From here? Eleanor pulled out her phone, a device she rarely used but had brought along for emergencies during her road trip. First, you're going to give me your contact information. Then, we're going to set up a meeting with my financial advisor to get your education fund established. After that, we're going to spend time getting to know each other properly. I'm still working, Katie said, suddenly practical. I can't just quit my job here, even with your help. I need to give proper notice, and I don't want to leave them. Short-staffed. Eleanor nodded approvingly. Rosa taught you well. Loyalty and consideration for others are rare qualities these days. Take all the time you need to transition properly. Good things are worth waiting for. As they exchanged phone numbers and made preliminary plans, Eleanor felt a lightness in her chest that she hadn't experienced in decades. For the first time, since her husband's death, she had a real purpose, a reason to look forward to tomorrow. And Katie, who had been facing an uncertain future just hours ago, now had not only the means to achieve her dreams, but also a loving family connection she thought she had lost forever. The afternoon sun slanted through the diner window, casting golden light across their table. It felt like a blessing, a sign that Rosa was watching over this reunion and smiling at the beautiful circle of love that had finally closed. Grandma always said that love never really dies, Katie said softly, clutching the locket to her heart. It just finds new ways to grow and spread to other people. Eleanor smiled through her tears, knowing that Rosa's words had never been more true. Today, in a simple diner far from either of their homes, two hearts had found each other and created a new family built on love, hope, and the enduring legacy of an extraordinary woman who had touched both their lives.